Good evening, everyone, and hello, my little hordlings. I hope you are having a wonderful, wonderful day. And if not, hopefully, hanging out with us can make your day a little bit better. How are you all doing? We are going to be having a conversation tonight about how ADHD and autism can affect our identity. I want to check in with all you guys real quick. See how you're going. Thank you so much, 3 or 4 monsters, for following. I hope you are having a, a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here. I'll turn the light up just a little bit so you guys can see my face. I am slightly tired. So I got some coffee. So I got some covfefe. My Yeet Isildur Lord of the Rings coffee mug, where it also says Yeet Isildur in Elvish. From Don Marshall's merchandise. I love it. I love Lord of the Rings, so I want more. But anyways, hope you're all doing well. I don't really know how to start this conversation because there's so many different avenues in which ADHD and autism can really affect our identity. So I might just kind of start with my journey, my experience when it comes to identity and how it affected me growing up, especially living in a military household, especially living in the 90s, growing up in the 90s. Which that was a very interesting time period to grow up, especially as a male growing up. But yeah, it is something that I have really deconstructed and worked on and evaluated and hyperfixated on, especially in my early journey of getting diagnosed ADHD and autistic. My initial experience and like realization of how much, at least being autistic, affected me was the use of like media, use of TV shows, use of movies, as modeling behavior for how I, as a male, should act, how I should present myself, what should be my interests, what should be the things that I partake in. And if you are familiar with like 90s media, a lot of that was just like, you got to get laid. That was the goal, right? Like that was the aspiration for a lot of men, for a lot of males. Got to get laid, especially before going to college, especially during college. So that kind of like really influenced my perspective of things in not a very healthy way. It taught me to approach things with a goal in mind, right? Like I had to, I had to get laid. I guess, I had to pursue women. I had to get those notches on the bedpost. I had to do all that stuff. Get laid, get paid, right? Should have tried prostitution 2-for-1 deal. You know, still might. Brain kind of derailed. I'm also playing with a fidget to help me focus my thoughts. It's called a yogi fidget. They're pretty cool. I like them. They're like little burp, burp. I can spin it around my finger and I can do that, and it helps me keep my thoughts going. But yeah, so during college, I didn't really know how to be human. I didn't know really how to be a person. I had relationships, I had long term relationships, I had short term relationships, but like in between those, I was always like really awkward in socializing. I was always really awkward in like I don't know what to do at parties because like parties, I think like everyone knows that they're there to try to get laid. That's what I thought. Um, but you still have to do like the social dance of doing all of that stuff. Like you have to be interesting, you have to be likable, which is hard for an undiagnosed autistic person to be. Not that I was like a jackass or anything like that. There were there were moments in my life that I feel like I was, um, but you know, I just really didn't know how to act, and I definitely pursued people for all the wrong reasons. You know, um, so it really affected my identity. It really affected like who I was as a person because one big aspect of my identity, especially now later in life in diagnosis, is realizing that I'm demisexual. And realizing that I'm demisexual was a big revelation, especially because of my sexual past of being kind of, promiscuous, I should say, and my pursuits and things of that nature. And, getting into that like drinking culture, which like that was another thing was like, I really used alcohol a lot to uh, mask. I used alcohol a lot to mask a lot, and that was my way of being able to do the things that I did for a long time, and that was not healthy, and that kind of went out of control. But yeah, there was a lot of you know, uh, late teens, early 20s, just kind of like tomfuckery because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how to be. I think that's natural, right? Like a lot of teenagers and early 20 people like don't really know who they are, but I didn't know who I was because I was trying to be someone else, right? Like I was always trying to be not me because that's what I thought that's what everyone was. So that affected my ability to formulate relationships and to communicate with people and to have healthy relationships because I was always pursuing things that other people wanted me to do. um, and realizing that I was demisexual kind of put a lot of things in perspective. And that was an interesting revelation, right? One of those things that was like, oh, hey, uh, I really do need connection when it comes to being able to be intimate with someone. And then people being like, well, that's just what women do, right? Like, that was always the response that I would get. Or like, that's what, um, which was very dismissive. And like, until I learned the language better to like articulate my thoughts, like, it's always dismissed as like, oh, that's like everyone does that, or that's what women do, or, things of that nature. And like, it's not that at all. Because I know plenty of people, both men, women, and in between, um, that can and do have sex without connection and enjoy it. Coming to heteronormative social culture to fake being a grown up, crisscross with being a human. Yeah. Yeah. And that was a big struggle because like I felt like I had to be a certain way. I felt like I had to perform, right? Like I had to pursue women as honestly like a goal or a trophy or someone to have sex with. Like that was the goal. And like it really affected my ability to communicate with women because there was always in the back of my mind of like, I'm trying to have sex with this person. And it's not to say that I didn't have like women friends. Cause I had some friends, but like it was always really difficult for me to maintain those because of like this thought of like, oh, I can't be friends with women because like women are for sex. And that was horrible. Like that, like I recognize how terrible that is. And that's not a healthy thing to, you know, carry, because if all you're thinking in the back of your mind of I should be attracted to this person, or I should be pursuing this person in a sexual way, that is going to affect my ability to get to know a person, to even treat them as a person. And fortunately, like I had to deconstruct a lot of stuff. Yeah. And hello, airing my laundry. How are you doing today? Hope you're doing well. Blanket on the term demisexual. So demisexual is someone who needs actual like connection with a person to have any sexual attraction, right? So this is, and that's the important part of it, is like, because there's a lot of different terminology that can be confusing when it comes to being demisexual. So there's libido, there's sexual attraction, and there's arousal, right? You know, libido. Like, I need a mouth reset. You know, but hello. Libido is, you know, you becoming aroused for whatever reason. Sometimes that is just like, I'm sitting here and I'm horny, right? Like that's libido. That's just like, I really want to have sex. Or I have that desire for that kind of intimacy. And then the arousal is, you know, from a specific thing. So like arousal from a person, like a person can arouse you, or something can arouse you. You can be aroused by things. And it could also just be a general excitement, right? Like that doesn't necessarily mean sexual, but is often connotated with a sexual arousal. But then like sexual attraction is literally like, this person, I want to have sex. Like I can have sex with this person, and it's going, you know, and I'm going to enjoy that experience, and I want to have that experience. But when it comes to demisexual people, I can look at someone and be like, that person's attractive, but I don't necessarily want to have sex with them because I don't know the person, right? Like I can recognize aesthetically how attractive someone is, but that doesn't mean I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm sexually attracted to that person, like, or I'm aroused by that person. And so I need to formulate a connection with that person before any sort of like actual sexual attraction is going to happen. And I didn't know that for a long time. I would just push through things like that. So I have one night stands and stuff like that in the past, and like, but it was always like empty, right? Like it was never fun. It was always kind of gross, like my words, you know, like it just didn't, it left me feeling just weird and off. And anytime I would verbalize anything like that to people that I know, like, oh yeah, like that's just like how they are, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess like everyone, like they have one night stands, and like, oh yeah, like sometimes you regret your one night stands, right? And like I thought I was just like regretting the one night stand, but I really wasn't. It was just like, yeah, it felt lacking. It wasn't, there was no intimacy, there was no connection. And so that really like affected myself as a person, you know, and finally coming to realize like, oh, I'm demisexual. That was really helpful to understand like how I can show up in relationships, you know, because I have been able to develop healthy relationships. I've been able to connect with people on deeper levels. I've been able to like, you know, deconstruct all of the toxicity that I went through, of like that I learned growing up, and have healthier relationships. And like a lot of my closest friends are women, and like, I'm able to have those connections without this like pressure of like, oh, as a man, I should want to have sex with this person, right? Like that's the only reason why I should ever want to get to know a woman, or a presenting person. Like, no, like that's not how it is. Like that's not how it should be, And there's a lot of people that still feel that way, and it's unfortunate. But like, one of my best friends, I was like at first interested in her pursuing a relationship because like we met and I was like, oh, she's cute. Like we had a lot of similar interests and things like that. And she was like, hey, I don't want a relationship. I'm like, oh, okay. Like she not want a relationship. I still like her as a person. I can see that we have a good chemistry as far as like, potential friends. And so like what I had to do then in that situation where like I was interested in someone and then that person wasn't interested in me, instead of being offended, like I probably would have been in the past, or like hurt for some reason because like being rejected, but I wasn't. It was just like that person wasn't into me like I was into them. So being in that position, I had to ask myself a bunch of questions. I had to ask myself, why do I want to maintain a friendship with this person? Right? Is it because I just want a friend? And if that's the case, then yeah, I'm going to continue with being friends because I can use a friend. I like having friends and we can just be friends. Am I doing this because I'm hoping that by being friends with this person, that they're going to find me attractive later on and I can change their mind about being friends, right? Like, am I trying to essentially play the long game, which is not healthy? Because playing the long game is you're entering a friendship with a person for all the wrong reasons because you're trying to manipulate them into liking you or into showing them that you are such a stand-up person and that, you would make a great, partner to them, and they just need to be around you long enough to realize that. That is not a good reason to enter into any type of friendship, and you should never do that because that is wrong and it's manipulative. And so like I really had to assess that. And honestly, if I didn't go through the deconstruction of my own like masculinity and identity, I would never have thought of those things. I would have probably just been hurt and felt rejected and probably been a little bit toxic about it. And I might have entered in that friendship in the hopes of changing their mind. And that's not healthy. Sorry, I had to get some coffee. Side one to Liz. I considered myself mostly demisexual. I just don't enjoy it without a connection to the other person or people. Probably when I was single, I mostly stuck with friends with benefits hookups. Yeah. See, the thing is, like, I've had friends with benefits, and like being friends with benefits is like it's easier to have that connection because, like, yeah, friends, you have that connection, you know each other, you're a little bit more comfortable with each other. As long as you can communicate and have those boundaries, like that's perfectly fine. It was a lot easier for me to have friends with benefits than doing like one night stands. Like one night stands always felt empty. Friends with benefits was like I could have fun, but there was still something kind of like a little bit lacking in that regard of like there was not a full on connection, of course. So there was still some like missing pieces. But when it came to like actual relationships, like that's where like the most fulfilled I ever was. Um, I've had those thoughts before, like this person's a woman. I wonder if I could hook up instead of just having a friend. Yeah, Alex, and like those are really invasive thoughts, and that really affects us in a lot of ways that like is not healthy. And we have to really look at how we are approaching people when it comes to wanting to interact with someone. And I know like it's rare for um men to kind of like have that introspection because you know you know women or femme presenting people in chat, if if you want to share your experiences, like I'm sure all of you have had some form of male friend just be friends with you in the hopes of having sex with you or having a relationship. That's a very common thing that happens. And it's one of those things that like I really want to, break free from, because like being demisexual, I need that friendship before a relationship anyways. So that's why like I can flirt. I am a flirt. I know how to flirt. I'm a Libra, like that's a thing. But like my flirting has evolved over the years, especially like with the realization that I am demi, is more of like my flirting is like getting to know you. So it's not very overt, especially at first. And I don't start getting a bit like degenerate or like very flirty with someone until I have gotten to know them, and like that has kind of like been established. I think that's part of like the autism brain as well, of like I need to know the rules of engagement. Like I need to know like what you are good with, right? And like there's some people that you just kind of build that chemistry with, but it's not everyone, right? Like, because there's friends that I flirt with incessantly, and there's friends I don't flirt with, and there's friends we didn't start out flirting that we ended up flirting a lot with. Like, it's all about understanding the rules of people as well. But yeah, and so that really like affected my ability to interact with people. Is like I had to deconstruct that. Like I had to deconstruct that toxic, you know, that's part of masculinity, the toxic masculinity of understanding, um, like how to approach women, like, and not treating them as just like objects to obtain, because that's just terrible. But like I was part of the problem for a while, and like looking back, I'm like, man, like I wasn't like all of an asshole, but there were parts of me that were, and that definitely affected a lot of my relationships at some point. For everyone, I need to know that you are safe with my brain before we get down. Exactly. Yeah. Like it's one of those things. Is like I need that connection and safety before I can feel confident in being intimate with someone, and like, or even just like have the experience be enjoyable. Like there's no real sexual attraction or even like arousal. That's the thing too, is like I have a high libido. Like that's one of those things. Like I I have a high sex drive. I know I do, but like if someone random were to come up to me, even if they're like super attractive, and they were to come up to me and they're like, I want to have sex with you, I'd be like, I don't really want that right now. Like, yes, you're attractive, and that would be kind of cool, but I need to like know you first. Like I need to know who you are. I need to develop a connection, and that doesn't even guarantee that I will have sex with someone just because I get to know them. Because there are plenty of people that I've gotten to know, and I'm like, you're cool, you know. So that's just kind of my experience, like discovering them demi, and like now understanding fully, like, okay, what is demi for me? Because there are different interpretations, or like some people are maybe more on the asexual spectrum than they are on the demisexual. Some people may be more capable of having one night stands even though they're demi, because there is physical need over emotional need, right? Like there are some times where you just enjoy the sensation of sex, and you don't necessarily like care to have the connection to fulfill that, and you can still be demi and do that. Like that can still be a thing, because that can be like how you are romantically connected with someone. So that can be a lot of different ways of how like demisexual or asexuality can present in a person. Um, yeah, very much like sensory seeking. Like, you know, if that's a sensory pleasurable thing for you, then you may seek that out, and you don't necessarily need to have the connection, but you can still be more demisexual in the regards of for you to fully enjoy the experience outside of the physical, then you would still need that. You would need that connection. Yeah, everything still works mechanically. Yeah, and that's why like I've been able to have one night stands because like mechanically things work, but it doesn't mean I'm enjoying like I'm fully enjoying or fully immersing myself in it. It was like, oh, okay, that happened, right? You know, and there are times where when the connection with someone wasn't there, or the connection to a person was damaged in some way, that mechanically things didn't work. Like, and that's something that can happen, right? Like, just you're just not into it because the connection's not there, so the mechanics don't work, and that is a thing. And that that is along the lines of also being ADHD, as well, because like if you're not stimulated through dopamine, and really engaged, then you're not going to be mechanically prepared. You know, things are not going to happen, and you can be distracted. Also, like that's a whole other discussion of like how ADHD and autism can affect intimacy on a different level, but like on an identity level, like you know, this is just like exploring these things, from the perspective of like I had to mask a lot as, a teenager in early 20s and going into late 20s, honestly, because I didn't really find out I was demi until a while ago. So that that was a big revelation for me. Was like removing that mask and realizing like this was a piece of me. But we're gonna take a quick break, and I will be right back. And we are back. So, yeah, Caitlin, you are struggling to understand the difference between baseline libido versus demisexuality or asexuality. Okay, so view libido as its own thing, right? Like a individual can have libido, so they can have the drive, they can have the want, the desire, right? So that is the libido. That's like I have the desire to have sex. But with demisexuality, even though I have that desire, does not mean I'm going to follow through with that desire with someone, because I need to have that connection with them to even have the sexual attraction to fulfill that desire. Someone who is asexual can have a different, experience. They can just be, they are sex repulsed, so they just don't have any desire. They can be sex positive, where they still participate in sex, but it's more a physical need and not anything else. And it's like more sensory experience, right? Or they're just doing it because they know their partners are, um, you know, seeking that, and they are willing and consenting, not just doing it, but like they're willing and consenting to do it for their partners, um, and like they still find some enjoyment out of it, maybe on the physical sense or just the experience, or connecting with their partner in that way. And then there's sex neutral, where like maybe they do, maybe they don't, and each person is going to be a little bit different. And that's why like demisexual does fall under the asexual umbrella, because like essentially, while like how I've described it for myself is, while I am not in a relationship or have a connection with someone, I really do feel very much like asexual, to the point of like it's hard for me to sometimes get out of that. Like it's a lot of effort to get to know someone. It's a lot of effort to find a relationship. It's a lot of, you know, and to build that connection and stuff like that. And, you know, while it's something that I really do enjoy because I'm me, and it's getting to that point is like the hard part for me, because it's like, it's a lot of work. And sometimes I don't have the energy for it, but like, once I'm there, though, like once that is connections established, once that engine is going, it's going for a very, very long time, and it just keeps going as long as that connection's there. Like there's no stopping it, really. So, um, but yeah, it's kind of a thing. Well, I've experienced the mechanics not working as a woman in past relationships, to the point where I was seeing a doctor thinking I had medical issues around sex, which were causing discomfort, pain. Turns out my issues were due to the changing connection, trust relationship with my then partner, and my arousal was just like, nope. But at like 19 and no education about Demi, I had no way of knowing the actual cause. Exactly, yeah. Because we're told that you are supposed to just be aroused, right? Like everyone enjoys sex. Everyone, like it happens. Like all you need to do is just like a little bit of foreplay or whatever, and like there you go, wim bam bum, and like you're good to go. And that's just not how it is. And like, and as a man, right? Like where performing and mechanics are such like a stigmatized thing when it comes to our experience of like, we have to be the performer. We have to be the one that pleases the woman, right? Like that was the perception that was like ingrained into me. Like we have to be the ones with the prowess and the ability and the skill to get a woman off, and you know, and that became like such a hyper focus of like, I have to be performative, right? Like I couldn't just enjoy the encounter. I have to perform. I have to do well. I have to make sure that this is a fun experience for the other person, and not just enjoy the experience as a whole. And I've shifted from a performance perspective to a pleasure perspective. And that allowed me to explore more parts of my identity, especially when it comes to like the BDSM and kink communities of, you know, exploring being a dom, exploring, what are my needs and wants in a relationship, and how do I want to be sexually with a partner. And it's, allowed me to explore a lot more with who I am as a person when it comes to, my own desires. It's gotten a lot more, um, you know, comfortable in talking about these kind of things, got a lot more open to exploring things, and, questioning my own sexuality as a person. Like, I know I'm demisexual, so like, does that mean that I could have a relationship with another man or masculine person? Like, is that a thing for me? Um, I haven't ever experienced sexual attraction to a man or a masculine person. But it doesn't mean it couldn't happen. I don't know, right? Like, it depends on the connection. If that connection's there, what's to say that it can't happen? So that's a very, interesting thought that I've never thought of before. At least, not for a very long time. Um, and it's it's a lot to kind of deconstruct. You know, so like it's and not on not even on like the sexual side of things of like understanding I'm demisexual, but like there's a lot of just like masculine things that I had to deconstruct. There's a lot of things that I had to really evaluate when it comes to my identity. And like this is the other aspect of who I am now is understanding that I'm gender nonconform. I know I don't align with non-binary because I still feel a bit on the like masculine spectrum where like I know I am male and like I I'm not necessarily like proud of being male, but like I acknowledge that part of me and and there's pieces of it that are part of my identity, but overall it's not really like who I am as a person. Like being male is not me, right? Like that's not something that I would describe as like major aspects of my identity. What it, there's that's why like I'm very much okay with people calling me he, they. I don't care if someone calls me she. Like I'm very secure in my masculinity. I'm very secure in my identity. I don't think things should be gendered. I don't think clothing should be gendered. I used to paint my nails a lot. I haven't been doing that recently because of the state that I live in right now. Um, I kind of miss it. I mean, not kind of. I do miss it. And like, I have like some nail polish sitting right next to me. I'm like, and I keep looking at it. I was like, man, I really want to do that. And I think I'm going to again. It's just being where I am is hit or miss with that kind of stuff. And that's that's things you have to think about, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, like I really evaluated what was important to me when it comes to identity. And this is like a thing of like I used to be so adverse to wearing makeup or appearing girly or like wearing girls clothes or anything like that. Like I I don't know, like it made me so uncomfortable. And I think that was partly of like the environment that I was raised in and like growing up and like always being told not to be girly and you know like that makeup's for girls and all this stuff, and that kind of ingrained into my brain that I had to be a certain way and that like if I were to put makeup on like I would lose something about myself. um Even though a lot of people say that I look good in eyeliner, you know. um and that like I like to paint my nails now. But I remember like moments in my life of like people wanting to put makeup on me and like I would freak out like no, you're not doing this. And looking back I'm like why did I act that way? Like what was going on? Like it's not that big of a deal. But it was like it was a challenge to my identity at the time and it just made me really insecure. Like I was insecure about things and like now I'm just like I'd wear a dress. Right? Like I'd wear a dress. I would do a photo shoot in the dress. Like I wouldn't care, right? Like that's just something that doesn't bother me anymore. Like it's a dress. Like fuck, man, it's probably comfy, the right one. Wearing skirts or something, I don't know. Like It's really interesting how things evolve over the years, and like part of me wishes that like I had this security in myself when I was much younger, because life would have been so much easier. So many different things would have been better for me had I known. I wouldn't have been this insecure person that only sought women out as something to like conquer. Like I would have been more secure in like how I dressed, presented myself. Um, I actually had the opportunity whenever I was in college to play Frankenfurter for Rocky Horror Picture Show because I was a theater major, and yeah, I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to like cross dress. Even though I was a theater major, there were some things that I was not as comfortable doing. I was fine acting, but like putting on that kind of clothing at that time, no way. So let me look at some of these comments because I know there's a lot of stuff going on in chat. You definitely, Lala, you definitely have to protect yourself first and foremost, either in terms of sexual health or your physical well-being based on your looks, which sucks. Other people can put you at risk. Oh yeah, yeah. I find all sorts of people physically attractive, but it doesn't do anything for me sexually without an emotional connection to go with it. Yeah, that is the demisexual experience. So, dump drunk man, funny thought about ungendering clothing. Clothing that was previously mostly made for femme bodies now starts being made to be form fitting for masc bodies, and this just increases the disparity in women's clothing sizes, cross brand styles. Yeah. I mean, like, a lot of clothing that was once for men is now for women, and yeah, like, clothing is just so, like, I understand, like, I respect people that, like, are into fashion and, you know, like, love that kind of stuff. Like, I respect it, but I also like I really hate that fashion is gendered. Dude, like I've seen so many like femme presenting people in suits and I'm like, "Okay. All right. Yeah. You look hot in that." And yeah. Yeah, I'm okay with this. You know? So like like a suit is a suit. Like it doesn't matter if it's made for a man or woman or non-binary person. Like it doesn't have to be gendered, right? Like, and I've seen men in dresses. I'm like, you know what? You pull that off really well. Like that's great. Like, and that's where like I can kind of see where my like sexual attraction leans is like seeing men in dresses. I'm like, dude, like you look great. You pull it off really well. Seeing a woman in a suit, like you're hot. Like that's sexy. So like I can that kind of thing happens, but who's to say that I couldn't also like find someone that's mass presenting or a male like attractive if the connection was there? I don't know. It's something that I've asked myself a lot, and I haven't come to a solid conclusion. Society has a lot to answer for in terms of lost opportunities when kids feel they can't choose something they want to pursue. Yeah. How many potential actors, musicians, engineers, doctors have been lost because society told the child that they can't do that because they're a girl, boy? I don't know, right? Like, why are jobs gendered? I know there are some jobs that are like really, really dangerous and they require a lot of physical acumen, and men typically tend to dominate those fields because of the societal construction of men being physically, tougher. But like, if a woman or feminine presenting person wanted to do that job and they had the physical acumen to do that job safely, they should be able to do that job. You know, like it's one of those things that like it shouldn't be reduced to gender. It should be, are you capable Are you fit to do this job? Can you do it safely? You know, and that's the only thing that should matter. Yeah, you're fine, dumb truck. There's also female dominated fields like early childcare. No men work there. I wouldn't say no men work there, but I would say that it is a very small field, like for men. Yeah, because like that is the women are more nurturing, that kind of thing. Which we have kind of derailed from the original topic of like how ADHD and autism can affect identity. Um, because I've been really just more rambling about my experience as a ADHD and autistic person and like how my identity was formulated based off of my experience being undiagnosed ADHD and autistic because a lot of it was masking. A lot of it was ascribing myself to a specific um, thing because I was taught a certain way to be, and I just felt that was how I had to be. That was it. I had a male dominated job occasionally, heard that kind of stuff. That's not a job for women, or how can you stand that hard work? Like, dude, if that's something that you want to do, go for it, right? Um, if you can do it, then more power to you. But yeah, I was just struck hard at the idea of little druids feeling you couldn't fully embrace acting. I just wanted to give you a hug and reassure you that you definitely could do it all, including costumes. Oh, I know. I think, acting came kind of like a later in life, not like later, late in life. Like it was my first foray into college. I was a theater major. Um, I didn't do as much like theater in like high school. Like I did it a little bit, like in middle school and high school, but not um, fully invested into it until college. And I'm not a great actor, at least like on stage or like movie or anything like that. I have a good voice. I can voice act, but I'm not a good like body actor because my I think it's part of like my autism of like I don't know how to human, right? Like that's where my struggle is. Not to say that autistic people can't act because there are plenty that do, but like my like ability to act as another person. Like I can mimic people, right? Like that was really good at mimicking people, but like acting was hard. Maybe if I could got some training, like more training. But yeah, no. I'd much rather just be like a voice in the background telling you stories. That kind of thing. We got slightly derailed. Shock. I know, right? I'm just now starting to realize how often I do or have been masking. Like, didn't even realize it was happening. Like, I'll think back to be like, oh, yeah, yeah. That. Welcome to the diagnosis journey, Sebastian. Um, you have you're in that beginning stages, and it can be very scary and overwhelming. But you're in good hands. Being here, we'll help you through it. um, It'll probably be better than a lot of autistic coded characters where it's an exaggerated stereotype. Yeah, like, you know, maybe I could act with, an autistic character for sure. But my memory is also really bad because of ADHD. So it's really hard for me to memorize scripts. That's one thing I know that I would struggle with as an actor. Like, I always struggle with memorization. It's just gotten worse. Like, I used to memorize music. Uh, and I used to memorize like scripts and stuff like that. Can't really do it very much now. It's really difficult for me too. So, but yeah, like I don't, you know, identity, is a big aspect of the unmasking journey of like questioning yourself, like questioning who you are, questioning the things that you like, the things that you enjoy or said you enjoyed. Like, do you actually enjoy all of the things that you say that you enjoy, or did you say that because you were masking and you were trying to fit in? Like, that was a big one, you know. Yeah, I used to be really into sports. I think I genuinely did like it, but like now I don't really care for sports. Um, because I used to be a physical kid. Like I used to be very physical. Like I played baseball, I played basketball, I played football. Like I was very active. I like to be active. I did, you know, a lot of just like crazy things, acrobatically. Uh, then I just didn't take care of my body, and that broke down very quickly. Yay, hypermobility, and not knowing that I'm hypermobile. Yay. Um, yeah, very. It's interesting to me that as a neurodivergent person who feels like an outlier to regular society, that the way I view my identity challenges the social norm, and that my masculine and feminine energy is fluid, and I don't like being told what to do based on my gender, including who I'm supposed to be attracted to. I'm everything, and I like everything. Don't put me in a box that I can't fit in. Yeah. And I think that's part of like the neurodivergent experience is like we do challenge a lot of that social norms. We do challenge like these rules that don't make sense, right? Like it doesn't make sense to have gendered clothing. It doesn't make sense that nail polish, everyone has nails. Why is nail polish an only feminine thing? It doesn't make sense that pink is the feminine color and that blue is the male color. These rules do not make sense. They're all made up. They're all bullshit and they don't matter. And we definitely challenge those norms as neurodivergent people, as ADHD and autistic people. So it's only natural that we attribute that same dissection of social norms into our own individual identity of like, why shouldn't I like all people sexually? You know? Why shouldn't I be polyamorous? Why shouldn't I, be okay with, things that other society deems wrong? Like, why? It doesn't make sense. Why are we aligning morality? Why are we aligning up more morality to like how many people have sex with? It doesn't make someone less moral just because they have more partners. Doesn't make someone more moral just because they have less partners. In fact, it makes them boring. Not all the time, but it can. Yeah. Never been a man's man. Like, yeah, like I've never really been that man's man either. And like my family is full of the men's men type deal. And I never fit into that. Very country and southern and, blue collar workers and stuff like that. And I hated that stuff. I'm not a blue collar worker. I can do it. I've done it. Don't enjoy it. I'd much rather be creative than anything. So I've just now realized our Twitch pictures show up in chat. Look at that dwarf face. Yes, it does. Like it shouldn't matter, but it does, and I get why it does. But like, why do we limit ourselves like that? It's unnecessary. I don't even get why. Like, I understand that society creates these constructs to as a form of control, and marketing. It's all marketing. Yeah, it's companies trying to sell shit to you. Um, but it's like, why are we so, as a society, easy to manipulate? Why is it so easy for us to be manipulated as a society? Yeah. Oh, diamonds are forever. No, you just had a bunch and you wanted to sell it. Like, I don't care about your diamonds. I hate diamonds. Diamonds are the worst gemstone. Yeah. The only people I ever related to high school were the other social outcasts. Yeah. Probably other ADHD and autistic kids. Being super offended by social standards was always pushed at me by my parents as well. The basics like hair length, makeup use, shaving. Yeah. Are those things that you actually enjoy, Kaylin? Like that's stuff that you would probably have to ask yourself. Like, are those things that you want to uphold and like that you find are part of your identity? And like, there's nothing wrong with someone being masculine. Like, if there's a man that wants to be a masculine man, as long as they're not harming anyone, like, yeah, more power to you. Same thing with women. Like, if you want to be really feminine in your presentation of things, of like, you really like makeup and dresses and fashion and all these things like that make you feel feminine, like, yeah, more power to you, do that stuff. But like, we can pull back from the societal expectations, we can pull back from you know the pressure for everyone to be this way. Read the book Cultish, you'll find out. Yeah, I mean, I understand, like, I know why people are so, as a masses, like, I understand masses are much more susceptible to manipulation than individual. So I chopped my hair with my autism diagnosis as soon as I realized it was a sensory nightmare. Yeah, there you go. You like diamonds are useful for resurrection spells? Yes, if we can actually resurrect people with diamonds, then yes, diamonds would have a use. Yeah. And yeah, well, that marketing campaign for diamonds was, yeah, abhorrent. So, but I honestly have run out of things to say, and I don't, given the nature of what I want these talks to be like, I'm going to wrap up the like official conversation, and then we can just chill and hang out for a little bit afterwards. So, for thank you everyone for joining me in this conversation, in this discussion of like how neurodivergency can affect our identity. We were a little bit more broad in the exploration tonight, but that's okay. Like, this is kind of a good like starter, um, place for people that may be just starting in their journey of deconstructing their identity and like realizing how their neurodivergency, I should say ADHD or autism, how their ADHD or autistic self can also affect their identity and like things that they like, things that they how they present themselves. Like, what is your mask? And like, as you are unmasking, like, there are a lot of questions to ask yourself. It can be very overwhelming. It can be very scary and very like, I don't know how to people anymore, because now the way I thought I was peopling was the way I wanted to people, but that's not actually how I want to people. I want to people differently. And so you have to figure out how do you want to people, and so yeah, it's been a lot of good conversation. And next week, don't know what topic we'll be talking about, but we will be here again next week, same bat time, same bat day. But for now, we're gonna say goodbye and bye.